and all audiences. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and good morning, everybody. University of California, the Research Center for Society and Culture in Indonesia, Indonesian Institute of Sciences, proudly present a webinar and discussion on Islam and society. Proudly present diversity as a web city in contemporary Indonesia, belief, gender, and politics. In contemporary Indonesia. And politics. Thanks all participants for joining, and we have 3 sessions of this webinar. First is opening remarks, second is presentation and discussion, and the third is concluding remarks. First is opening remarks will be delivered by Professor Ahmad Najib Remark, Head of Research Center for Society and Culture. To Honorable Professor Ahmad Najib Burhani, time is yours.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and very good morning for those in Indonesia, and good afternoon for US participants. Actually, I just want to welcome you, and first of all, I would like to express my gratitude to Professor Muhammad Ali. Usually, I call him Kak Ali, and also Mas Prabowo, our colleague at LIPI, for making this discussion possible, this webinar possible. I would like also to thank our discussion. Of course, Professor Nelly Van Doorn Order. I think it has been a long time not seeing her. Last time in 2012 or University, a beautiful campus in North Carolina, right, Nelly? And I met some friends there. And still keep in touch with them, such as Uriah Shafit in Tel Aviv University, Chiara Formici, and Professor Michelle Browers. At that time, the title is Minority. So to thank our speakers, Muhammad Abdillah, I haven't seen him. Muhammad Abdillah, Hans, Ken, Michi, Teh Titin, Mbak Leli Fitri, and I think this is the first time I met Mbak Leli, although Dundin Zainuddin, who just completed his doctoral degree from UIN Sunan Gunung Jati, Bandung. And then thanks for all participants for joining us in this early morning webinar here. Just wake up for some of us. Our discussion, I think it is most important for the future of our nation. And we have panelists who will discuss their papers that have been published at the special issue of the Muslim world. This is a Q1, a journal. Samuel Zwemer, as a mission journal, if I'm not mistaken. But with the changing time, it becomes a very reputable academic journal. The intention for a topic in our mind, like digital theology, or perhaps on Muslim millennials, or underground Muslim world like punk Muslim and something like that. And therefore, we need to sound this in, but I think I don't have enough time now, since we have 6 panelists. Therefore, I wanna stop here. But before that, there is one more thing that I wanna say, that the works of scholars sometimes did not link up with the wabarakatuh.
Also,
Yeah.
Mas Prabowo.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Ahmad Najib Burhani, for the opening remarks. And let's step to the second session. Our main agenda is webinar and discussion. Dr. Dundin Zainuddin. He is a senior researcher at the Research Center for Society and Culture, LIPI. To respectable Dr. Dundin Zainuddin, you have 2 hours for discussion. Time is yours.
okay, thank you, Mas Prabowo, Prof. Najib. I'm delighted to be a moderator this morning. So our discussion will be presenting 6 issues. Yeah. So the first one is between faith and social relation, the Muhammadiyah and Nahdlatul Ulama, fatwa and ideas on non-Muslim and interreligious relation, will be delivered by Prof. Ali, yeah, from University of California, Riverside. And one is the politics of interreligious dialogue in Indonesia, an analysis of the ulama anti-Christianisasi fatwas and their challenge to the government interreligious harmony project, will be delivered by Muhammad Abdillah from Muhammad Abdillah is Hartford Seminary. He's a lecturer and researcher in this university. And the third one is say to Christmas analysis of the Islamic fatwa on the prohibition against wearing non-Muslim symbols in Indonesia, will be presented by Hans Abdil Harmakaputra from Harvard Seminary, Connecticut. And then the fourth one will be counter of the divine feminine, Islamic and Christian feminist theologies in Indonesia, will be presented by Laili Fitri. And the fifth one will be the role of women in interreligious dialogue in Indonesia, study on the Forum for Religious Harmony atau FKUB, will be delivered by Wewin Siti Aminah Rohmawati from Darussalam Islamic Institute, Ciamis, Western Java. And then the sixth one will be post-Islamism revisited, the response of Indonesia Prosperous Justice Party or PKS to gender-related issues, will be presented by Ken Michi from Waseda University, Tokyo. So please, Prof. Ali will be the first one to present. Will be 10 minutes each of presentation. So we should give what's the time limit. So I don't want to interrupt your presentation. Please, Prof. Ali, to begin. Time is yours.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dundin, Zainuddin. Thank you so much, Professor Ahmad Najib Burhani, and everyone. Good morning and good afternoon here. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Thank
well,
you.
yeah.
And you also can see my screen?
Yes,
All right.
certainly.
So this paper is a larger project of my monograph on Islam and religious pluralism in modern Indonesia. And this is a piece of that larger project. Here, I would like to focus on Nahdlatul Ulama Muhammadiyah and Nahdlatul Ulama fatwa and on non-Muslim and interreligious relations. The argument that I'd like to propose here is two opinions or fatwa. One is the organizational opinions or the organizational fatwas, rulings. And the other one is the individual authors associated with Nahdlatul Ulama and Muhammadiyah. And I see a variation in the fatwas, especially in the individual authors about non-Muslims and interreligious relations. So the organizational opinions, both Nahdlatul Ulama and Muhammadiyah, tend to reinforce belief. And belief is always often associated to ritual, while promoting social tolerance and kindness in social relations. So you have a promotion of reinforcement of belief on the one hand, but tolerance and kindness and justice on social relation on the other hand. Dissenting authors advocate reinterpretations of certain beliefs and promote religious tolerance and inclusivism towards the people of the book, particularly Jews and Christians. Those organizations and people use different approaches. Organizational rulings prioritize the jurisprudential principle of avoiding harm over bringing benefit in judging the legal status of actions involving other religions. Whereas the dissenting authors universalize the Quran and commentaries, the other Quranic passages and certain hadiths with exclusive and negative attitude toward other religious communities, and prioritize the principle of bringing benefit over avoiding harm. So using the Qaeda also in order to judge social relations with other religious communities. I have this outline. So first I introduced Muhammadiyah and NU's religious advice and thought, then methods of belief, the notion of Aqidah or creed, and Ahlul Kitab, especially Jews and Christians as non-Muslims, and then the question of salvation, who gets salvation? And then the worldly matters of social relations, showing kindness and justice. Then the last part is the belief, between belief and social interaction, avoiding harms versus bringing benefit. In terms of organizational rulings, I focus on Himpunan Putusan Tarjih Muhammadiyah, published in different books, including Tanya Jawab Agama, question and answers about religion. Also, the Pedoman Hidup Islami Warga Muhammadiyah, as an outcome of the Muktamar 2000. And then you have some scholars of the Muhammadiyah who published Tafsir Thematic Al-Quran on the interreligious relations. Apart from that, I studied several authors, not all authors, about interreligious relations, about Christianity and Islam, for example, by Professor Muhammad Amin Abdullah, and also Dr. Hamim Ilyas in his book, Tiki Akbar, Theological Principles of Islam, Rahmatan lil Alamin. I think I have echoes here. I'm not sure that you can hear it. I'm not sure why the Zoom is not really clear. But anyway, Nahdlatul Ulama's organizational rulings have been published in different books, Masalah Keagamaan, and then has been republished under the title Solusi Problematika Aktual Hukum Islam Nahdlatul Ulama, which is a collection of fatwas. And this is by local Nahdlatul Ulama branch, is Java, which also address some questions about interreligious relation. Then I just focus on two books by dissenting authors, NU activist scholars who produce books about religious pluralism, dissenting authors. So in the matter of belief, the organizational rulings, both Muhammadiyah and NU share commonalities. In other words, they tend to see belief as fixed. So for example, false. So Islam has two meanings, universal meaning and specific meanings. Universal meanings, believe in the submission to God, send down to all the prophets of God. So it's the universal meaning of Islam as submission, as the attitude of submission to God. But then Islam as universal Islam, in particular time as delivered through the Quran and also the Sunnah. So you have Islam being defined differently, and in the fatwas, Islam is only Islam who is true for the Muslims after the Prophet Muhammad time is only Islam of the Prophet Muhammad. And that's very interesting because it is that's what we find in the fatwa, in the organizational fatwas. So belief is fixed, while social relations are changing. So how to act in relation to the Jewish people, to the Christians, is changing according to context, whether or not they are attacking or whether or not they are showing hostility toward Muslims. Then you have a different belief is fixed. So there is no salvation beyond Islam. Now that's the organizational rulings, fatwa. But the dissenting authors have some other interpretation or kind of different interpretation, more inclusive. We can use the term inclusivism in order to suggest that some of these authors, either Muhammadiyah and NU, believe that there is the possibility of salvation is more nuanced in dissenting authors, not in the organizational fatwas. So that's really actually the conclusion of my article. The last part of the conclusion is on matters unclear and mixed, which is a belief or it is social relation. For example, in terms of greeting non-Muslims, like Merry Christmas or doa lintas agama or interfaith greetings. Then you have the question about whether or not it is halal or haram. And then they use the fiqh kaidah avoiding harm is preferred to bringing benefit. So if you greet the non-Muslim, then there is a possibility that they actually you accept their belief, and that's considered either subhat, unclear matter that you need to avoid, or in some cases they said that it is also haram. While the dissenting authors, no, actually it would bring benefit by greeting Merry Christmas, by sending Muslims to a Christian school, for example. So the second question is about whether or not parents can send their children to non-Muslim schools, and then bringing benefit is preferred to avoiding harm. So sending them to Catholic school, for example, have bring more benefit to the harm that might happen to their children. That's, I think, my conclusion. Thank you so much. That's just to summarize what I have in my article, and looking forward to the discussion. Pak Dundin.
Thank you very much, Prof. Ali. Very interesting, short, but very clear. Yeah, that these two organizations have, could be say, double paradigm. In terms of theology, is very exclusive, but in terms of social relation, is very exclusive. Yeah. Okay. Move to the second one. Muhammad Afrillah is here already to present the politics of interreligious dialogue in Indonesia, an analysis of the Ulamas, anti-Christianisasi fatwas, and their challenge to government interreligious harmonies projection. Please, Muhammad Abdillah, Dr. Muhammad Abdillah.
Hello, thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah.
Can I share the
Yes, please.
Screen? Okay, wait for a second. Okay. Thank you for the opportunity. Here, my article in this journal is about the politics of interreligious dialogue in Indonesia. So here I'm starting with the idea of the belief that the Majelis Ulama of Indonesia, the Majelis Ulama Indonesia, MUI, as the official ulama body in this country, has the power to express its anti-Christianisasi position in fatwas, advice, and recommendations designed to resist the government control and then to direct government policies on interreligious harmony. So this is the belief. So in this case, MUI or the official ulama body in the modern era doesn't concern only on the religious on religious teachings or just madrasah or masjids, but also in the political spectrum. Yeah, this is the belief. So, and I take the case of anti-Christianisasi fatwas because it consists of several tension between Muslim and Christians in Indonesia. So yeah, can you hear my voice? I'm sorry.
Yes, clear.
Okay. Yeah. So this belief. So my argument is based on several cases that the ulama has played a very big major role in determining the politics of certain countries. You know, like the Jacob Scofford Peterson's how the ulama of Al-Azhar and the Egyptian states ulama body can resist the governments of Egyptians as well as the MUI in Indonesia by Muhammad Atta Mudawar. So this is kind of the cases that we can do. And I take the case of anti-Christianisasi fatwas because Christian Muslim relation in Indonesia is very complex. So it's the social and political tensions there dominate or coloring the relations between state and coloring the issue between state and the and religion policy in Indonesia. The issue of pribumi and non-pribumi, or the pribumi usually means Muslims and non-pribumi refer to non-Muslim, in this case Christians. And then there is also the debate about the constitutions, and then the cleansing of communism in 1960s and the fall of Suharto era. So that's kind of the there are direct or indirect elements of Christian Muslim relation there. So like the cleansing of communism, there is kind of massive conversion of Abangan, or what the so-called ex-communist people to Christianity. And then it's the presence of schools, hospitals, mass media that's affiliated to a church or Christian organizations. So this kind of presence, to some extent, viewed as the movement of Christians to convert Muslims to Christianity. So this presence kind of a threat, yeah. So Mujibur Rahman found this, and then also Pak Jans Aritonang, and then Rifial Ka'bah about this matter. So yeah. So the idea of the MUI state stand between religion and the states as other official body, as official in religious organizations. So any kind of this and any kind of the the relation between oh my god, yeah. So the relation between the MUI chairpersons and the states is very determining how the presence of MUI and its attempt to the introduction of certain regulations. So yeah, I gave 4 examples of the MUI chairpersons, Professor Hamka, Professor Ali Yafi, and then Kiai Hasan Basri and Professor Ma'ruf Amin, who is currently the vice president. So both Professor Hamka and Professor Ali Yafi were forcibly resigned from their positions as the chairpersons before their assignment was due, and yeah, and Kiai Hasan Basri and Professor Ma'ruf Amin, I put them as 2 chairpersons who are very active in promoting the we so-called Islamization or Islamizations, or introduction of religious policies in Indonesia. However, here Professor Hamka as the chairpersons of MUI from 1975 to 1981 has had the what is called has played the major role in the idea of the law of charity from the Hamka as the chairperson of MUI in 1975 to 1981 has issued fatwas on the attendance of Christmas, and then on the let me see yeah. So that is the. I'm sorry.
So, Muhammad Abdillah, where are you now? How is it the technical issue there?
I think it's done, Kali. It's already stopped the screen, share the screen.
Okay, we can continue if you want, Pak Dundin.
My connection is.
Okay.
I'm in the field.
Muhammad Abdillah is coming.
I'm sorry, I'm now in the field of my work, so I'm in Bangil, so it's kind of the connection is not really good in this case. So let me see, hello.
Yes, we can hear you. Just
I'm sorry. Hamka and Hamka has successfully introduced some of legislation, such as the interreligious marriage, and then the law of hari raya, religious holiday, religious holidays. So the fatwas of interreligious marriage, and then the fatwa of the attendance of the Christmas attendance has encouraged the introduction of the law of or intervene the marriage law, and then introduction the law of religious holidays. Hassan Basri, although he didn't issue many fatwa on an anti-Christianisasi, but then he was working with the hand in hand with the government, especially in the pengkaderan ulama, the ulama kader in cooperation with the transmigration policy in Indonesia, and as well as Pak Ma'ruf Amin, who introduced the about the here. He is very active in many Dewan Syariah Nasional, and then and currently working with the Minister of Religious Affairs on the to strengthen the position of FKUB. So I think this from my presentations. Thank you so much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Pak Dundin, unmute.
Oh, sorry. Okay, thank you very much, Muhammad Abdillah, for your presentation. Clear and keep your time, yeah. And then the third one will be that's say no to Christmas, an analysis of the Islamic fatwa and the prohibition against wearing non-Muslim symbol in Indonesia. Will be presented by Hans Abdil Harmaputra. Okay. Time is your Harmaputra.
Thank you, Pak Dundin. I will share my screen now. Event, and I really appreciate the opportunity to meet other authors and scholars and all. My presentation will analyze the fatwa issued by the Majelis Ulama Indonesia in 2016 and its social political implications. In December 2016, the Indonesian Ulama Council, or MUI, and I will henceforth call it the Council, issued an Islamic legal opinion, or fatwa, that prohibits Indonesian Muslims from wearing, quote, non-Muslim symbols, end quote. It is clear from the Council's explanation that its members had formulated the fatwa in response to some reports from Indonesian Muslims who claimed that their employers forced them to wear Christmas attire during the Christmas season. The fatwa was endorsed by certain Muslims who had already expressed their concern regarding the issue over the past several years. For example, advertisements such as this one were easily found online. Unfortunately, the fatwa also caused social unrest in the form of vigilante groups such as the notorious Islamic Defenders Front, or Front Pembela Islam, conducting raids under the pretext of upholding the fatwa and protecting Indonesian Muslims' interests. So these are some of the raids done by FPI in Surabaya. However, what makes the fatwa directly disturbing to many Indonesian Christians is the fact that the Council, MUI, seems to equate Christians with unbelievers. Now let's see the fatwa itself. The fatwa was issued by the Council on December 16. There are several foundations ranked from the most to the least important sources. The first one is Al-Quran, second one Hadith, third one Principles of Fiqh, and then commentaries of Ulama, and then another fatwa from MUI prohibiting participation in Christmas celebration. This is issued by Buya Hamka in 1981. And then article number 29 of the Indonesian Constitution, an opinion from a Muslim scholar, and opinion and suggestions from the Council's fatwa commissions. And I will not explain all these foundations, but I will just mention the Quranic verse that used by one of the Quranic verses. This is from Al-Baqarah 104. All believers, do not say attend to us, but regard us and listen, for there is a painful punishment for disbelievers, end quote. The Council interprets this verse as a prohibition against imitating non-believers. However, this interpretation is not the only possible one from the Quranic verse. For instance, the Study Quran explains that the term ra'ina comes from an idiomatic usage that is considered to be demeaning and mocking as used among people of the region of Mecca and Medina. Therefore, the verse is about being respectful to the Prophet, and so it's not a prohibition against imitating non-Muslims. Following the Quran, the fatwa mentions several hadiths that are often referenced to justify the separation between Muslims and non-Muslim. One of the hadiths says, the messenger of Allah said, whoever imitates a people, he is one of them, from Sunan Abu Dawud. And so that's about the fatwa itself. Next, I will give an example of public response from a Christian figure to the fatwa issued by the council. So Reverend Dr. Jan Aritonang's letter to the council is arguably the most widely known public response to the legal opinion or fatwa because it went viral on the internet. I divide the content of the letter into three parts. In the first part, Professor Aritonang points out that the fatwa does not clearly describe what kind of religious attire or symbols are prohibited. Second, he speaks about the notion of Christianity and culture, especially pointing to the fact that there is no consensus among Christians about Christmas symbols. What is visible in the dominant culture has been imported from the tradition of some Western churches, and therefore, these Christmas symbols are not related directly to the Christian faith in Jesus Christ. And the third one, he disputes the characterization of Christians as synonymous with the unbelievers. He states, what or who are the unbelievers from the council's perspective? Do all non-Muslim people, including Christians, are unbelievers? The Indonesian dictionary describes kafir as those who do not believe God and the messenger of God. If this is your definition, then more than 5 billion people in the world are kafir. So here, Professor Aritonang contests the meaning of unbelievers by stating the fact that Christians are called the Nasara in the Quran, not unbelievers. He makes his position stronger by daringly giving an interpretation of the hadith quoted in the fatwa that is different from the council's interpretation. He notes that nowhere in those hadiths are Christians equated with the unbelievers. Therefore, if the council insisted on their point in treating Christians similarly to unbelievers, they should have argued in a better way. And he also reminds the council of their task of maintaining harmony in Indonesia's diverse society and preventing any potential conflict. And now I will explore some of the political implications. The fatwa has motivated hardliner Muslim groups, such as the Islamic Defenders Front, to launch raids on malls and other public places to ensure the implementation of the fatwa. These incidents affirm what Professor Aritonang and other critics of the fatwa had feared, namely the increase of interreligious tension between Muslims and non-Muslims in Indonesian society. Another implication is of theological matter, namely the interpretation of unbelievers disregard Christians as one of the people of the book or Ahlul Kitab. Their status as people of the book justifies Christians' rights and involvement, not only in religious matter, but also in social and political areas. So it is official religions, including Christianity, affirm the belief in one God. The third implication is related to the question of the larger constituents in December with the escalated tension over Ahok's case has led some towing the line between what is Islamic and what is non-Islamic. The fatwa could imply that if a Muslim should not within the context of the political circumstances.
Hans, your voice is broken.
Oh, okay. I will stop my screen, I guess. Okay.
Okay,
So
that's clear.
yeah. So some positive outcomes. The fatwa inspires discourse in the public sphere, not only among Indonesian Muslims, but also between Muslims and Christians, as demonstrated in Aritonang's letter. Still broken, I guess. Okay, and then the second, I'm almost done, so bear with it a little bit. And the letter marks a new way of engagement in the history of Muslim-Christian relations in Indonesia, where a Christian is willing to engage with and challenge Muslims on their own terms and in amicable tone. Is my voice still broken, or can you hear? Okay, this is the conclusion.
It's clearer, yes, clearer. Thank you.
Okay. So the conclusion, it is important to note that despite their non-binding legal status, the Council's fatwa, MUI fatwa, can influence both society and government's policies, and thereby validating their theological and political positions. Muhammad Nur Ikhwan, for instance, has rightly observed that the council's function should not determine the importance of its fatwas in a direct and short-term manner, but instead in their indirect and long-term impact. An excellent example of this pattern is the 1981 fatwa prohibiting attendance at a joint Christmas celebration. Its issuance date of more than 30 years prior has not exhausted its relevance until today. Because of its capacity for shaping the society, the Majelis Ulama Indonesia and its key actors like Professor Ma'ruf Amin, who is currently Vice President, have obtained privileged status in their engagement with the government. Whether the council plays its role more independently from the government and acts to be more appealing to the people, or remains more dependent on the government and supportive of the government's policies, the MUI, I think, will continue to be a potent political force in contemporary Indonesia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pak Harma Putra, for your presentation. Very interesting, and there is a negative and positive impact of this fatwa. Okay, we move to another issue. Laili Fitri will present issues about counters of the defined feminine Islamic Christian feminist theologies in Indonesia. Okay, please, Laili Fitri, time is yours. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Zainuddin, and also thank you for UC Riverside and the Indonesian LIPI for sponsoring this really amazing event. Okay, let me share my screen and let's hope that the internet god will be pleased with this presentation. All right. Okay, do you all see the screen?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so my project is also a part of, someone is not muted, so I hope that the, can you hear my voice well, actually?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So this project is also part of the bigger project that I'm doing right now with my institution, which is the comparative analysis on Islamic and Christian feminist theologies in Indonesia. And this is some kind of a survey article that I wrote to just explain about the development and also the substance of Christian and also Islamic feminist theologies in Indonesia and how they develop in a comparative perspective. So the importance of this project, there are three importance that I would like to mention here. The first is the literary importance, in which there are only, so far, there are only 3 lines of dominant inquiry in the discussion of Islamic and also Christian feminisms in Indonesia. The first of that is the development of Islamic feminism and of Christian feminism, and also the development of a dialogue between religious-based feminisms and the secular-based feminisms in Indonesia. So, so far, there is not a single work that treats the development of Islamic and Christian feminist theologies in Indonesia in a comparative perspective. And the second importance is epistemological importance, in that within Islamic studies and also within the discussion of Christian theology, especially in Europe, Islamic studies and Islamic theology. So this work is meant to highlight the work of Southeast Asian feminist theologians and how their voice can also actually be constructive towards the development of Islamic studies and Islamic theology as a field, and also Christian theology as a field. And then the third importance is theoretical importance, in which in here I want to highlight theologies that are not actually constructed from textual sources, but rather constructed from embodied presence of the believers in their daily life. So because of most of these feminist theologies, they come from reflections of the feminist theologians of their daily life, then this is something that is very much different theoretically comparing with other kind of theological discourses that actually usually come from textual resources and also classical resources. Now, the major arguments and theoretical framework that I present in this work is that the first is that conceptions of the divine feminine comes as a reflection of the kind of feminist theologies that have developed in Indonesia. So in this work, I highlight 4 works of feminist theologians from Indonesia. And we can see later, for example, in Nasaruddin Umar's High Theology with a view of gender complementarity, and also Etin Anwar's Theology of Creation that is rooted in the struggle to place Indonesian Muslim women as biologically, spiritually, and ontologically equal to men, and also Marian Katopo's Theology of Servanthood of God and the Feminine Holy Spirit that is rooted in the Christian woman's experiences of alienation, and also Judith Tiweri's Theology of the Mother that is rooted in anti-colonial perspective and experience of interreligious conflict. So I do believe that one red line that connects all of these Islamic and also Christian feminist theologies is their conceptions of the divine feminine that actually reflects on how this theology is constructed in the first place. And then the second major argument is that Indonesian feminist theologies are actually the products of a combination of global and local dynamics and factors. So globally, for example, Islamic feminist movement in the 1990s and also Asian Christian theology in the 1980s both influenced the development and the formation of Islamic and Christian feminist theologies in Indonesia, but locally also anti-colonial religious women movement in Indonesia, for example, post-colonial religious secular dialogue, especially on issues such as polygamy and also the issues of right to divorce, for example, and also the paradigm of state egoism in terms of the idealist nationalist form of motherhood formation in the time of Suharto regime, for example, and also the popularization of feminist movements via virtual communities in Indonesia today. All of those factors came to construct the specific contours of Islamic and Christian feminist theologies in Indonesia today. And for the theoretical framework, because this is a comparative theology work, I use Jerusha Tanner-Lemke's framework for comparative feminist theology, in which in her work in 2018, she mentioned that there are three important elements to compare feminist theologies between Islam and other religions, which is first is the element of constructiveness, which is it refers to this element of embodied instead of abstracted theology. And also it contains negotiation and interpretations of theology that is rooted in the social realities of the believers. And then the second element is which is that effort to conceptualize humans' perception on God and also their location, the human location in their relationship with God. And the third element of the comparison is the comparative, in which Lemke argues that we cannot actually talk about the development of feminist theologies without talking about the encounters and engagement with other religious traditions. Feminist theologies has always been interreligious theologies. That's basically the point. And then so let's go to the Indonesian Islamic feminist theology here. I mentioned two works. The first is by Nasaruddin Umar. In 2014, he wrote a book about the divine feminine in the Islamic tradition. And Nasaruddin Umar is the leader, the cleric leader, the imam of the Central Mosque in Jakarta in Indonesia. And so Nasaruddin Umar's theology has two major aspects. The first is it is a form of high theology with social implications. There is that discussion of divine feminine and masculine at the levels of ontology, which he mentioned of God's masculine and feminine attributes. And then there is also a theological level of it, in which he mentioned that divine masculine and feminine as representing different facets of God's substance. And then there is also social political reality dimension to it, which he mentioned that divine masculine and feminine as having different implication on the spiritual formation of Muslims. So if you believe to a somewhat more masculine God, you will be this kind of believer. While when you believe to somewhat a more feminine God, you will become this kind of believer. So that's basically the point there. And then the second point is that when I see it from the social implications, then this divine masculine and feminine analysis that Nasaruddin Umar has proposed actually fall within a gender complementarity perspective. So it is not something that is very much inclusive to non-gender or non-binary people, for example, and it still somehow presents masculine and feminine as something that complement each other, in which the feminine side roles is that to support the presence of the masculine side. So this gender complementarity perspective is something that needs to be criticized from a feminist perspective. Now, another theologian, Etin Anwar, who is actually teaching in William College in the US, also proposed an egalitarian theology of creation. Now, Etin Anwar's egalitarian theology of creation, it has three levels. At the levels of ontology, for example, she argues that Adam as an archetype of human creation, rather than Adam as a reflection of an androcentric God. And then at the level of ethics, for example, women and men, she argues, actually have the same ethical obligations as Muslims in Islamic tradition. And then at the biological level, she also argues that women and men have equal roles in procreation process. Now, she then connect this ontological, theological, ethical, and also biological level into an interrogation of the formation of Islamic authorities. So those three levels of equality, she argued, means that women and men reserve the rights to interpret Islam's and also reserve the rights to possess a position, an authoritative position, to interpret Islam based on their life experience. So then this equality then translated into an equality of authoritative interpretation. Now, in the Indonesian Christian feminist theology side, I also mentioned two works there. The first is the work of Marian Katopo. She was a theologian and also a novelist from Indonesia. And her theology has two salient aspects too. The first is these experiences of alienation. So she argued that God is the absolute other. And because God is the absolute other, because Jesus Christ has always been marginalized in his historical life on earth, then it is something that mirrors the position of Christian women within the Christian church in Indonesia and also in Asia in general. And these experiences of alienation also compounded by her own personal experience of her childhood in Muslim majority Jakarta, and also her patriarchal alienation experience from the church itself. And then the second element is this theology of servanthood of God. So rather than seeing God as Lord, as King, as Father, Marian Katopo proposed to see God as servant, God as this subject that comforting, a mother presence and a giver of life. And she also used the term theology of the womb to mention this theology of servanthood, in which communal liberation instead of individual liberation of Christians will meet in this metaphorical womb in the continuum of past, present, and future. And the second one is Wilhelmina Tiweri, who is a Moluccan feminist theologian. And her theology actually comes from the context of interreligious conflict between Muslim and Christian in Maluku between the years of 1999 up to the years of 2002. So her theology is an anti-patriarchal Christian theology that serves as a canopy of healing interreligious division between Christian and Muslim Moluccans first, and then also between Christian, Muslim, and indigenous believers of religions in the islands, in the province of Maluku. And she also proposed to us an anti-colonial theology that comes from indigenous cosmology, because she takes inspiration from an indigenous religion called Agama Nunusaku religion, in which the creator of the world is actually a female. And her name was Alifuru Ina or Hulamasa. So this female creator narrative, then she used that to flip the narrative of woman, which in the mainstream Christian teachings is the cause of the fall of humanity, to women as creators of abundance. And then also there is that narrative of woman as the primordial character of deceit and lies in mainstream teachings of Christianity that is flipped into woman as embodiment of goodness. And then another narrative that is flipped by this is that the narrative of earth as the punitive place in the traditional teachings that is flipped into the narrative of, you know, the earth as a place of blessing rather than as a place of punishment. So within this indigenous context, then Wilhelmina Tiweri can also argue that with this female God presence in the indigenous context, it is impossible for the indigenous context to be the root of patriarchal theology. So then patriarchal theology in Christianity must come from the imposition of Christianity that is brought by the colonial and imperial power of the Dutch and Portuguese and other colonial powers in Indonesia. So the patriarchal Christian theology is not actually of Indonesian theology. It is of colonial power theology. And so she argues, once we can get our theology cleansed of all of those colonial powers factors, then we can embrace this feminist theology. So that's my presentation for today. Thank you for your attention.
Wiwin, silakan langsung Wiwin.
Okay, thank you very much, Kang Ali, and thank you very much, moderator, Pak Dundin. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Can you hear my voice?
Yes, clear. Yeah, clear. Okay.
Okay, all right, thank you. Maybe it's better for me to turn off my video because the internet network here is not really good.
Okay.
Yeah, I would like to share a screen. Okay. All right. Can you all see my screen, my share screen?
Yes.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much. Yeah. Yeah. First of all, I would like to thank you for Lipi and also UC Riverside for inviting me to this very important discussion for me. My title in the article, my title of the article is The Role of Women in Interreligious Dialogue in Indonesia, a study on Forum for Religious Harmony or FKUB, ya, Forum Kerukunan Umat Beragama. Yeah, first of all, I would like to highlight the the contradiction of the role of women in terms of peace building and interfaith or interreligious dialogue. In one side, women always become victim of conflict and violence, yeah, such as in conflict in Ambon and Poso and other places in Indonesia that involve different religious communities. Women usually become the most victim of it. And the second one, the majority of discussion and also decision making on issues of peace and security is mostly done by and for and about men. And then the last one is women are commonly underrepresented in interreligious dialogue. But in the other side, we can see that women and women's organization play an essential role in conflict reconciliation and peace building. We can see it also from the case of Ambon and also and etc. And then the second one, women have a great capacity to resolve conflicts using dialogue and nonviolent means. And then the last one, I believe that women have an indispensable role in interreligious dialogue. Yeah, before I focus to FKUB, see the masculinity and femininity in terms of issue of negotiation and also dialogue. the patriarchal culture value masculinity over femininity. So this is resulting in male domination in the areas of life. And then the second one, even though in Indonesia there is the significant what we call development in involvement of women in public areas, but the traditional gender norms still apply in most Indonesian societies to this day. And then also the masculinity and femininity influences the process of negotiation. That is why I would like to highlight that in this case, the involvement of women is actually one of the key ways to ensure a fruitful dialogue and negotiation process, including in interreligious dialogue. Now, I would like to focus on Forum for Religious Harmony. FKUB is an institution by religious leaders from different religious backgrounds with aim to create harmony in a society, and was established. Hello? Can you hear my voice now? Hello?
Nah,
Yeah?
that's clear. Yeah, clear.
Yes, it's clear, Mbak Wiwin.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Okay. All right. Yeah. Sorry. Or maybe I just stop share screen, yeah?
Yeah.
I think better. Okay. Okay. Can you hear me now? Better? Okay. All right. Thank you. So there are three main, yeah?
Yeah. Clear.
Yeah. Okay. Can I continue now?
Yes, Wiwin, please continue.
Hello? Oh,
Yes.
yeah, okay, sorry. Yeah. So the three main tasks of FKUB is the first one is engaging in dialogue with religious and community leaders. So in this case, FKUB can communicate both government and also society. The second one is providing policy recommendation to the local government in building houses of worships. And the third one is disseminating laws, regulations, and policies related to religious harmony and community empowerment. And if we see the PBM, so FKUB member amounted to 21 at the provincial levels and 17 members at the regency or city level. If we see the large number of FKUB, which is in the provincial levels, there are 34 FKUBs, and in the instansi level or kabupaten kota level is more than 500, with more than 10, maybe almost 10,000 of members. So this make FKUB is a big what we call big institution that is really have a strategic role in cultivating peace in society through its main task. And then let me continue. I see at least three problems in this case. The first one is insufficient involvement of women in interreligious dialogue, especially in FKUB. This is part of my on personal what we call experience as interfaith activist since the end of 1990s until today, and also I'm part of the FKUB of Province of Yogyakarta since 2004 until today. So I see this the insufficient of involvement of women, and then also the FKUB role has not fully effective due to lack of women's involvement. And then the third one is there is male hegemony in interreligious dialogue. if we see generally, the lack of women in interreligious dialogue has been highlighted by many scholars. For example, Sousa and Rihartono mentioned that women have not been significantly represented in hierarchy of religious institutions, and their presence was considered minimal or even irrelevant. And also, Abu Nimr and Stewart pointed out about religious institutions as a whole are patriarchal institution dominated by men, particularly in leadership position of formal religious structures. And also the Fletcher mentioned about the prominence of the parliament model of dialogue that tends to be elitist and exclusive and disconnected from general public issues. Now, I focus on FKUB, yeah. So women in FKUB structure and practice. Based on my research, in the provincial level, the composition of FKUB in provincial level showed an average of 91.3% male and 8.7% female members. And also there are 5, and I believe more now, there are 5 FKUB with all male members. And in the Regency city level, the result is that 92.8% male members and 7.2% female members. And there are 41 Regency or cities with all male members. So this is more than 40% from almost 500 FKUBs. So on average, the percentage of female members of FKUB was only around 8%. This what we call this number also highlighted by Pusat Paramadina. Pusat conducted the research on FKUB, and then the result is similar with my research, that is only 8% of female members of FKUB. And then my article highlight the factor of male domination at FKUB. The first one is, if we see the structure, we can see that in PBM, the article 10, paragraph 1 to 3, mentioned that there is no like specific gender distribution requirement for FKUB. And also, if we see that the member of FKUB consists of local religious leaders, and it usually representative of religious council, and it mostly the member mostly are men. And if we see from the program activities, in terms of, for example, the topic, the FKUB usually focus on general topic of related to interreligious dialogue. Only few FKUB discuss specific topic related to women and gender, or even children. And then in terms of research person, only a few FKUB activities or program, either individually or in collaboration with other parties, involve women as resource person or facilitator. And in terms of participants, many dialogue, I believe, amongst religious leaders involve only a handful of female attendees. Now, before I conclude my presentation, let me explain about hegemonic masculinity and FKUB, and also its impact on the embodiment of religious harmony. The low ratio of women to men indicates an imbalance of power between men and women in FKUB. And then if we see, it is rooted in the power process by the male FKUB members as religious leaders. And in this case, religion clearly plays a significant role in fostering and perpetuating this power dynamic. And then the masculine domination, as noted by Bourdieu, in FKUB has created a predominantly male image of FKUB in Indonesia. This is likely to be reproduced in the future by religious institution. And it is also justify what Bourdieu mentioned about 3 primary institutions that reproduce masculine domination, namely religion, family, and education. And the hegemonic masculinity, as as mentioned by Roland Connell, has both direct and indirect impact on the achievement of FKUB's goal of realizing interreligious harmony, since the participation of women could greatly impact and improve religious harmony in Indonesia. Also, a hegemonic masculinity in this case has had a decisive impact on the gender gap between women and men, both as FKUB member and as beneficiaries of its program. In turn, it will also lessen the effective function and role of FKUB in creating interreligious harmony in society. But even though this male image of FKUB, but I see a small positive development. For example, I mentioned only two, that in FKUB of East Nusa Tenggara province is currently led by a woman, a Catholic representative named Maria Teresia Game. This is, I think, good sign. And then also the second one, FKUB Karangasem in Bali has a Department of Youth and Women's Empowerment to encourage women and youth in implementation of gender equality and in community development activities. This phenomenon, basically, when I see deeply, is inseparable from the establishment of the Interfaith Women Forum, or Forvela, and the Interfaith Young Generation Forum for Gemala, founded by FKUB Bali at the end of 2015. I would like to end my presentation with four conclusions. The first one is my article highlighted women's underrepresentation in interreligious dialogue in Indonesia, which also occurs in other countries worldwide. The second one, many factors, of course, contribute to this deficit, but the most noteworthy factor is the exclusion of women from leadership roles within religious institutions due to subordination and marginalization of women. This is evident in the law involvement of women in the Indonesian FKUB structure and practices, as I mentioned earlier. And then the third one, the large disparity between men and women in FKUB didn't arise by chance, but evolved through a long series of circumstances related to practices of masculine domination that were culturally, politically, and theologically nurtured. And then the last one, the masculine domination in FKUB is basically rooted in PBM itself, that reproduced by the religious institution, which become the basis of FKUB. It has contributed to unequal gender proportion in FKUB membership and in validation. And it also led to the presence of hegemonic masculinity in FKUB that has made women's voices less heard, their presence less visible, and their aspiration less articulated. If this is not challenged, it will manifest in the practice of homosocial men, as pointed by Kimmel. It is necessary to conduct further studies to explore the ways to increase women's role in FKUB while eliminating hegemonic masculinity. That's all from me. Thank you very much, and I'm so sorry for the inconvenience related to internet connection. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much, Bu Wiwin, for your interesting presentation. I think it is promoting gender equality, especially in FKUB, Forum Kerukunan Umat Beragama in Indonesian language. It is related to the final paper will be presented by Ken Michi, Post-Islamism Revisited, the response of Indonesian Prosperous Justice Party, PKS, to gender-related issues. Please, Ken Michi, to present. The time is yours.
Okay, good morning.
That's clear.
Yes, okay. Can you see my screen? And also, can you hear my voice? Okay.
Yes.
I can hear clearly.
Selamat pagi. Good morning to those
Selamat pagi.
presenters and audience in Asia, and good evening for those from US. I'm very happy to present in this very great opportunities, and I want to thank to Kan Ari for organizing this seminar, and also Lipi, Mas Najib, line, and also Dr. Nelly for the comments. Well, so because time is short, let me highlight some of the points I made in my article. So as you can see, my article titles Post-Islamism Revisited, the response of Indonesia's PKS to gender-related issues. So as a background, a lot of scholars are interested in the fate of the Islamism, or how the Islamism or political Islam transformed. And one of the influential concepts proposed by Asif Bayat is post-Islamism, which represents an endeavor to fuse religiosity and rights, faith and freedom, and Islam and liberty. In short, he argues that some of the Islamist movement transformed from that they emphasize on the religious morals to rights, like human rights. And then some of the scholars who research on Indonesia argues that the PKS is an example of the post-Islamist. And as you know, some of you know that, the president of PKS, Sohibul Iman, also mentioned that before the 2019 election, that is the PKS is a post-Islamist party, all right? So indeed, the PKS show their flexibility in democratic moderation, and they mostly emphasize on anti-corruption and good governance rather than like implementing Sharia in the national politics. But at the same time, they do enforce the kind of the conservative and Islamist position on gender-related legislation. The typical example is a 2008 anti-pornography law, and the currently elimination of sexual violence bill, RUU PKS, in 2019. So the PKS opposed the RUU PKS. So it's a bit confusing. Then the question of my article is, why does PKS generally claim to promote human rights and democratic values, as it defends such contradictory stance on gender-related legislation like RUU PKS? And then under what conditions does the party choose to be more Islamist than post-Islamist? So by exploring the party's views on gender and gender-related legislative process, I argue that the PKS has the patriarchal gender views, and which is constructed by the domestic, the Indonesian family values. And also it can be traced back to Islamist ideological background of the PKS. And second argument is that through the analysis of the legislative process, the domestic political considerations and pragmatic calculations of electoral democracy made PKS more Islamist than post-Islamist in some case. And typically, the party emphasized this dichotomy between the pious Muslim and the other in an attempt to increase support from Muslim voters. So I analyzed the party's gender views, and I have three findings. The first one is that the PKS, even though it promote women's social role, like economic and political role in the society, but they primarily locate women's role within the family. But this is not the, just only in PKS, but as Weringa have argued that this obedient role of the women have been promoted by the authoritarian Suharto's regime. And also this obedient pious women tend to be emphasized after the Reformasi, and unfortunately, even the government after the Suharto promote this kind of women's position in the society. And number two, the PKS is cautious about using terms like gender equality or feminism as an imported Western concept. So this is typically Islamist position that they are kind of have distrust to the West. But as we have observed this kind of discourse anti-LGBT in Indonesia, a lot of people combine this Islamist discourse with the nationalist discourse that's against the Western culture invasion. And number three, the women's issues are always coupled with moral concerns. Typically, the flame that even though the PKS promote the women's role in the society, but they always put emphasis on the framework of employing, the commanding the good and forbidding the evil. So in the framework of the Nahi Bunker, they put the women's or gender discussions. So these characteristics can be traced in the domestic gender creation. But at the same time, it is the PKS position is quite similar to what the Yusuf Qaradawi have argued in gender issues and other issues. The previous studies on the PKS it's connect the Muslim Brotherhood background and PKS, but really they mention on the contemporary Ulamas influence to the PKS, like Yusuf Qaradawi. Okay, and also through the analysis of the legislative process, in my paper I also mentioned on the anti-pornography bill, but also because of the time limitation, I only take example of the RUU PKS today, and I think that some of the audience thinks that PKS is a Salafi, Wahhabi, so it's quite conservative, so it's quite natural they are against the RUU PKS. But if we examine the party platform published in 2017, they actually show their concern on the sexual violence, and even they quote some of the reports from the Komnas Perempuan that it is not, how to say, the natural or by setting that PKS is against RUU PKS. Actually, when the bill was proposed in DPR in 2016, PKS didn't have any clear position to the bill. But those who are against the bill from the beginning is, for example, the very conservative gender-focused NGO AILA, the Aliansi Cinta Keluarga Indonesia. They very actively lobby to against this bill from the very beginning in 2016. And so gradually this kind of the discourse which is against this bill by mobilizing, a kind of discourse anti-West, anti-LGBT kind of stuff. But, that PKS slowly absorbed this kind of discourse. But in the end, approaching to the 2019 election, mainly responding to the attacks from the Indonesian Solidarity Party, PSI, and also interestingly, PKS differentiate from Gerindra because some of the politicians in Gerindra are very positive to the RUU PKS. So it is part of their strategy in 2019 election that to stand out from other parties. So they have a rationales to oppose this bill. So as a conclusion, the domestic political constellations, not just the ideological background, but the domestic political constellations and the pragmatic calculations of electoral democracy provides a compelling incentive for parties to apply Islamist rather than post-Islamist framing of such issues. And I didn't really talk about this, but in my paper, I reconsider the self-biased post-Islamist thesis. In short, here, the post-Islamist feminism is unthinkable or unlikely if we observe what the track record of the PKS. So that's all for my presentation. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Ken, for your nice presentation related to response of Indonesian Prosperous Justice Party to gender-related issues. Very important issue and interesting. I think the audience should keep your question. I hope later on we can have a session after the next one. So the next, we have one session, discussion session. So all people will be discussed by Prof. Nelly. Yeah. I hope you can discuss all the papers in the frame of Indonesia and diversity. I think it is not so easy task, yeah? But I believe that Prof. Nelly will be accomplished nicely for this discussion. Okay, time is yours, Prof. Nelly, to discuss all the papers.
Well, thank you very much. And sorry if I look strange because my computer no longer wants to connect to the original connection. Can you hear me okay? Because I moved to my iPad. Okay.
Yes, we can.
Okay.
We can.
And I cannot show you anything because I don't have anything on my iPad to share.
Okay.
So I will speak slowly and ask me if you want me to repeat something. First of all, I want to congratulate everybody writing in this journal. Something is going wrong, which is very important. Maybe people should mute themselves. I don't know, something is going wrong. Yeah. I think this is an important contribution to understand issues of interfaith dialogue and understand the inner dialogues within especially Islam. So I thank you all who are participating, and I thank you especially Zainuddin and Lippi for organizing this panel. My first observation is something that Ken just made very clear to us, that nothing is black and white in these discussions. People change their minds, history changes, perceptions change, and circumstances change. And I found it very interesting to read in Professor Muhammad Ali's paper that the reason why Muhammadiyah created the Tafsir Thematic al-Quran, which he indicates was, when it was published in 1995, it was to give guidance in times of interreligious strife and interreligious violence. And the NU, the Fikih Kebangsaan, that had as goal to protect Indonesia from external and internal threats. So one of the very interesting observations I found in the article by Muhammad Ali was that the Tafsir Thematic had as goal to expand the meaning of Islam as the religion of Fitra, the primordial human nature. And he refers to Rudolf Otto, the famous scholar of religion, Rudolf Otto, who somehow saw that a sense of the divine was connecting people across the world, people of faith who believed in a divine being. And my first question when I saw that came up to me was if this kind of tafsir could somehow be brought into conversation with the feminist interpretations that Laila Tur has presented to us today, that also see a unity of humanity, in this case where it concerns gender, but there is no reason why the divine should stop at uniting gender. And so one of the questions that comes up when we see the different explanations in Professor Muhammad Ali's article, when he, for example, says that the scholars agreed that not all, or some scholars agreed, not all, that not all the people of the book, not Ahlul Kitab, are the same, and that we can rethink and reapply the category. And this brought up in my mind, from a point of view of interfaith relations, and from a point of view of someone who is not a Muslim, I am a Christian. My question was, how much do we actually know about each other? Because the big fatwa that is being discussed today, the fatwa from 2017 about Christian symbolism or symbolism that is not Islamic, refers to issues such as clothing, which like wearing a Christmas hat, and it refers to headbands with bells and other issues. Well, the thing is that, as we just heard, Pak Aritonang also observes, there is no consensus among Christians what symbols for Christianity are, and many of us do not consider a Christmas hat a Christian symbol. That hat refers to Santa Claus, and Santa Claus is not a Christian figure. And so basically, all these issues, I am originally from the Netherlands, these kind of symbols were imported from the United States to countries across the world, and are actually, in our view, more a sign of globalization and a sign of the secular part of populations wanting to participate in celebration rather than being religious. So what is considered a religious symbol is not considered a religious symbol by many Christians in this case. And so what I'm trying to say is, what do we know about each other? One of the issues when we take decisions about each other, and I say each other because we have been studying the fatwas that were produced by the Majlis Ulama Indonesia, for example. But to me, some of these fatwas remind of decisions taken here in the United States by local governments. For example, there is a state here called Oklahoma, where they introduced a law against Sharia. Well, there is hardly a substantial group of Muslims in Oklahoma, so nobody knows what they are afraid of. But they somehow felt that proactively they had to introduce such a law, which to most of us looked completely useless because there is no danger. So the question, basically what a lot of these issues point at is that, first of all, that it is often unclear what the real agenda is, that it is often unclear if the agenda is political or if it is religious or if it is about social hierarchy. For example, one of the articles in the journal is by Ahmed Siddiq about Muslims and Christians in Madura. And he refers to what he calls an ideology of silence, where one group has more power than the others, but then he divides this power in economic power or political power or religious power. And then he elaborates on how people belonging to certain groups that are powerless or that hold the power somehow find compromises in what he calls unspoken ways. They find unspoken compromises in living together. In other words, they do not really discuss the religious issues. They simply live together and accept the situation as it is. So one of the very interesting aspects that I saw brought up, for example, in Mas Abdullah's analysis of the anti-Christianization fatwa, was the issue of what affects the heart of the faith. And I just I just mentioned that Christmas greetings and Christmas clothing is often not considered Christian or religious by many Christians. When you say Merry Christmas, for example, Merry is not a religious term. If you would want it to be a religious greeting, you would use another word. You would say blessed or something, or may God be with you this Christmas. But I think that one of the very interesting issues that is totally unspoken and unmentioned is that in the end, very much comes down to the debate surrounding the Panchasila. And what do I mean by that? Well, as examples, we heard that there was, of course, the Christianization in the 1960s during the anti-communist purge. And then there is the issue of the presence of Christian schools and Christian hospitals. Well, you have the same issue. You have Christian schools and Christian hospitals in places such as Egypt, but they do not have Panchasila there, which means you cannot move from one religion to the other unless you convert to Islam. You cannot convert away from Islam, which solves the whole issue. It means that if Muslims go to Christian schools, absolutely nobody expects them to ever be converted to Christianity, or if they go to any other type of school. And so in a way, what I found very striking is what is not being mentioned, which is the reality of the fact that Indonesia is built around the principle of Panchasila, which provides a certain freedom of religion that is very unique in the Muslim world, because you can move between religions if you wish, although the fatwas around interreligious marriage have tried to make that more difficult by enforcing the fact that a couple chooses one religion, that if it's a mixed religious couple, that they choose one, that the husband or the wife convert so that they have the same religion, which I, of course, can very much understand in the religious reasoning from the scholars who came out with this fatwa, because it is much easier if you just have one religion when you raise children, and when you raise your children in a religion. It is much more complex when both parents each have their own tradition that they follow. But that is a whole different discussion. So, but the question about Christianization, that is really a big question, because that has led to fatwas like the 2005 fatwa by the MUI about against religious pluralism, against liberalism, and there was something else that they were against. And now this to me was a very strange fatwa, because I have never met anybody in Indonesia who was not deeply religious. Indonesian person I know, and I think I know quite a few, is deeply religious. I have never met an Indonesian who said, I'm an atheist. I know they exist, but I have not met them. So this idea of, you know, or against, it comes across like very strange to religious plural country also sounds, the question is, what is behind it? And I think that is one, the political agendas that the different groups have. Those remain, those have been revealed in the different articles, but still remain unmentioned. But if we have all these different players, for example, some mentioned the opposition to the president, Joko Widodo. Others mentioned the opposition against Ahok. And then you have the different platforms where all these discussions are being played out. But the thing is that what we are looking at is what Ismail Oropi in his article calls that political powers and religious authorities cooperate to create religious orthodoxy. And that is the issue. What is the religious orthodoxy? And we see the problem right away with the first article by Muhammad Ali. We already have two ways of defining religious orthodoxy, Muhammadiyah and Nahdlatul Ulama. And you can add to that Majlis Ulama Indonesia. You can just in one of the articles, the role of NGOs such as Alkis, Fahmina, Setara. You have the role of FKUB, and then you have the role, and I'll come back to that later, that is, for example, of groups such as ILA that we just heard about, groups that I call instigators, or people who somehow stir up a certain topic. So the question then is, what about real threats to society? When KUPI, when the Congress Ulama Perempuan Indonesia ended in 2017, the women brought out advices that they called advice, but that actually were fatwas, on unofficial fatwas. And I call them unofficial, double unofficial fatwas, because technically speaking, a fatwa is non-binding. It has a lot of influence, but technically speaking, it's non-binding. So this was double non-binding. So basically the fact that the women had as one of the three fatwas, the environmental issues, the destruction of the environment, and they mentioned human trafficking, and they mentioned child marriage. That is very significant, because those were obviously the issues that really bothered women more than anything else, which brings up Wiwin Rahmawati's paper, an excellent article in this journal about the lack of women in FKUB, and it immediately begs the question, how would FKUB, how would their decisions be different if more women were present, at all levels of the FKUB? And I'm now coming to Laila Fitria's wonderful article on the contours of the divine feminine, where she upholds that male and female are created on applicable to the rest of the people. because I believe that all of us were created by the divine, by God. So basically, and I'm now going to skip something. Is the connection okay again?
Yeah, it's back now.
It's back. Okay.
Yes, back.
Let's go then. I hope that you could hear some of the things I said. But basically, the whole issue that we're looking at is, the question is, how do they try to interpret the mind of the divine, and how do their ideas reflect theologically? And finally, because I look at the keep my breaking Ken Mitchie's article of the PKS really exposes, is closely related to the last article by Yahya Kayana. That is an analysis of the preaching of Abdul Somad, where it basically, both articles describe the power of individuals and focus groups. It says people cannot hear. I'm disappearing.
Yeah.
All right. It's Professor Nelly. It is on and off, but you may continue. That's fine.
Go to my final point, and I hope some of the points came across. But article, the very last one about the preaching of Abdul Somad, that shows the power of in calling up issues, and then eliminating issues. Okay. Okay. Let me, because I think that the point, yeah, it is. I can you hear me? Or individuals such as Ayla or all topics that are highlighted, they all have the power to change topics. The very important bill that will protect many women against it. The opposition has been growing without quite knowing the state. People not knowing all the facts, people just hearing half of the truth or half of the reality on that, and that is problematic. And I think that this issue of the Muslim world of what happens at religious and political decision making and what can be done, and a very important role of women in the process. And this was the end of what I have to say. And Ken seems to be able to hear me, but I break up in my own microphone.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Prof. Nelly, for your discussion. You have discussed excellently. You did very well, and then, but yes, we have missed some point, because of unstable Wi-Fi. But then we have time left to discuss all this. It is time to question and answer for our audience. You can some have written some question in. You can also raise your hand if you want to comment. Actually, I was disconnected once. Check in my computer, so maybe Prabowo or Prof. Ali can help me to read some question. Okay. Actually, the first one is about saying Merry Christmas. That's it. Saying Merry Christmas is should be discussed clearly. That's
all right.
That's question to Pak Hans Abdul.
Ke saya.
Okay. Pak Ham. Yes, questions about saying no to Merry Christmas. Maybe Prof. Ali can also explain this question.
Okay, I can start.
Okay, please.
Could you mute yourself, Pak Dundin?
Yeah.
And Aida, please mute yourself. You are not talking. Thank you. All right. Thank you so much. First, okay. Can you hear me now? All right. First, I would like to thank Professor Nelly van Harder about Van den Harder, on the discussion that tried to connect all our papers. And I think that the big question of each other. And I think based on my paper and also other papers, we know very little about each other, and if not nothing about each other in terms of, the theologies, the beliefs, the cultures of other religions. And I think that's a underlying point that we can see from the fatwa, from the writings by Muslims. And when we talk about other religions, we don't talk about other religions in their terms. We don't try to understand how Christians believe, why they believe, and so on and so forth. So it is from mostly an Islamic textual perspective, from history, and based on different contexts in Middle East, also in Indonesia. So that's my my response to that point, which is very very straightforward, and it's very little that we know about each other. The question about Merry Christmas, it is very complex question, and I the way I see the fatwas is that the prohibition of saying Merry Christmas in the fatwa, especially the organizational fatwa, was to protect the unity of Muslims, and based on their own particular understanding of the scripture and the hadith. But that's not the only interpretations that I would rather expect that the scholars would give more interpretation about this. One, Merry Christmas is not necessarily a religious thing, as already Professor Nelly pointed out, right? Merry Christmas is a cultural thing. It's a greeting. Like you say, Selamat pagi, apa kabar, and also and so forth and so on. It is not necessarily to believe in the divinity of Jesus and so on and so forth, as the fatwa seems to suggest, right? But even though let's say it is religious greeting, it is not necessarily prohibited, because some Muslim scholars like Rashid Ridha or Indonesian scholars like Quraish Shihab and others, they say that it is religious thing to say Merry Christmas. It is also an Islamic thing to say Merry Christmas. And for example, based on chapter Maryam, chapter 19, verse 33, this is how, for example, one of the scholars tried to support Merry Christmas to Christian among Muslims. So peace is on me the day I was born, the day that I die, and the day that I shall be raised up to life again. Wassalamu ala yawmin wulidtu wa yawma amutu wa yawma ub'athu hayya. So that is one verse that suggests that even then you can use religious text in order to support the possibility of saying Merry Christmas to Christians. Of course, this is different from the fatwas and the verses that I use. And also you can find the hadith that suggests, for example, issued by Nahdlatul Ulama Istimo, I mean, not Istimo, is Java. Bahsul Masail is Javanese Nahdlatul Ulama about the interfaith greeting. And there is some Quranic verses there, and also the hadith that is cited that Muhammad, also the Prophet Muhammad, ever greeted salam to the Jews and also to the pagans, the polytheists, using the hadith, Bukhari and Muslim, for example. Things. So you also have Ibrahim, who also said greetings to his father, who was not monotheistic. So in other words, you do have some references, textual references provided by among Muslims about the possibility of saying Merry Christmas. It also applies to other religions, maybe to Hindus, Buddhists, Confucius, and others as well. But this is a good case of how Muslim scholars have interpreted verses of the Quran and Hadith differently. Yeah, and it is why very contested, and it is why very interesting. And Hans' paper really indicates that dynamics and impact. I think that's it from my part. Maybe Hans or others will join the discussion. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Ali. Hans will.
Yes, just briefly.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think Prof. Ali has highlighted the foundations or theological reasonings for saying Merry Christmas or not saying Merry Christmas. But I just want to briefly show that a year after the issuance of the fatwa, Yai Haji Ma'ruf Amin himself states publicly that wishing Merry Christmas, mengucapkan Selamat Natal, is not prohibited. So he said it publicly, and he made a video on YouTube wishing Christians Merry Christmas. And this is interesting because, as Professor Ali said, this is a contested issue. In the previous years, Muslim figures have said something, a prohibition or allowance, but Central MUI has never been saying anything. And in 2017, the chairperson, just before the election, he wished Merry Christmas for Christians. So I just want to reiterate with the election.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Hans. And then I think we have another question. One is Abu Ali raised hand. Please, your question. Abu Ali?
Seem to be disappeared.
Oh. Are you still in monitor, Abu Ali?
Yes, I am. Can I comment?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, please.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for everything. My comment I address to Professor Nelly and Professor Muhammad Ali. For me, greeting Happy Christmas is okay, doesn't matter. But say amin when somebody pray doa another religion, it is not okay, forbidden. Say amin is forbidden. Greeting Happy Christmas is okay. That's my personal opinion. I need your feedback, Professor Nelly and Professor Muhammad Ali. Thank you very much indeed.
Well, if I may say something, Professor Muhammad?
Yeah, please, Prof.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that, you know, what you are mentioning there, Abu Ali, is a very contested. Praying together, also among Christians, this is a huge topic. Many would never accept it. But I think we can learn from some cultures where they solve the issue. For example, in Egypt, whether it's Ramadan or whether it's Christmas or even Easter, everybody says, Kul sana wa anta tayyib. And that solves the issue. You know, may you be good this year, or may you have a good year, or may the whole year be good for you, whatever you translate it. You know, you have a greeting and you basically convey that you wish each other goodness. And so you can take it out of Christmas. And I've always wondered why that never comes up in Indonesia, that finding an alternative, which actually brings me to the question that I really wanted to ask, connected to Bu Wiwin and Lailatul's presentations. You know, like how would things actually change when women would be involved? You know, when for example, not just about the greetings with Christmas, but you look at all these fatwas, and I mentioned the Kupi fatwa, which suddenly focused on very different. Well, I know I'm not allowed to call it a fatwa; it's an advice, right? But that really suddenly focused on the heart of some very difficult issues. So how would that change if the women, if the daily reality, the different way of theologizing and thinking about the divine, how would it change these different questions, for example, that we have been seeing? I know I mentioned Prof. Muhammad Ali's article a lot because he sets the scene. I think, by the way, to all of the volume is put together brilliantly. The way it flows from setting the scene to looking at the different individual case studies, it is marvelously done. And then by ending, what I say was, you know, while talking about PKS and while talking about this one preacher, basically cases of, you now call in the States, those of us who live in the States might know the word gaslighting, changing the reality, changing what you're, you know, gaslighting, that's what it is. Just keep talking, round up people in talks, let them believe you even if you know it's not true. And so that is, so it, the whole journal has a beautiful arc in how it was put together. I don't know if you did that, Muhammad Ali, or if you did that together. But basically, the question remains through all these articles, how would it change if women who are not from Ayla, forgive me for saying that, how would it change if they would interfere? And maybe Lailatul or Abu Wiwin can answer that. I don't know.
Thank you.
Can I respond to that, or?
Okay, please.
Yes, thank you, Buneli, for the appreciation. And I think for that beautiful arch of articles that put together really well, we need to thank Professor Muhammad Ali and Mas Afdillah for co-editing the work. And yeah, to your question about what will change if women actually have participated in the construction of interreligious encounters in Indonesia, I think one major point that needs to be mentioned is that there is this shift from high interreligious dialogue mechanism, which actually involved all of these formal organizations and also state apparatus and political parties with religious leanings, to something that is more grounded in grassroots movement. And there is a beautiful example actually for this coming from the Mothers Movement for Peace in the island of Ambon. In the post-conflict in 1999 up to 22, actually one of the first actors who built up the bridge for that interreligious encounter after the interreligious conflict was actually mothers who sell fish in the market, in the daily market. So this is not an interreligious encounter where people meet and intentionally talk about how Islam perceive Christianity or Christianity perceive Islam, but it is an encounter in a daily life. It is an embodied sympathy and empathy for others and seeing them more as neighbors, more as friends, and try to survive together after the conflict rupture the society. So I think when we see more into the context where Indonesian women try to negotiate their life and try to encounter their neighbors, for example, there are a lot of small different things that we can actually bring up together as a beautiful example of embodied interreligious dialogue instead of a doctrinal or theological debate that happened in the high interreligious dialogue level. And so probably in the Merry Christmas thing, for example, Muslim can say Merry Christmas to Christians, not because MUI say so or not because Ma'ruf Amin already allows that, but because you are my neighbors, because you are my friends. And that's why I say Merry Christmas to you, because we cannot live without each other. So I think that's one point that needs to be highlighted. Maybe Mbak Wiwin will add something.
Okay, Mbak Wiwin will add.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah,
but thank you very much, Pak Dundin. Can you hear me, my voice?
Yes, clear. Yeah, clear.
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think thank you again, Ibu Nelly, and also Kang Ali and Abdillah. I think I just want to add one thing that answer Ibu Nelly question. I believe if women very much involved in interfaith dialogue activities, particularly in terms of formal one, I believe the tolerance, or maybe what you call as mentioned by Mbak Fitri, the problem of telling what we call Merry Christmas and maybe Selamat Galungan, Selamat what we call Buddha itu apa Buddha? Perayaan Hari Buddha itu what?
Salam
Waisak.
budaya, salam budaya.
Waisak, yeah.
Waisak.
It will not be the problem if I think this dissemination about tolerance, peace, and also how to introduce other religions, spreading and disseminating within family, for example. And in this case, women as a mother and maybe sisters and also a teacher and etc. Very much what they call they have a big role, and not only big but also strategic and crucial in disseminating the values of tolerance in the society. So I believe that is why in my article I suggest to government, if the PBM will change to the presidential what they call regulation, so there should be 30% quota for women. And I believe if we civil society what they call support this idea, the government will hopefully hear our voice. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mbak Wiwin, for your opinion for this matter. Next, we have another question. It is in the chat, written by Dian Nafi. Is it possible if there are parties that make the polarization in Indonesia become worse, how we can find solution for the polarization and strengthening the tolerance also and unity? Maybe every presenter can answer this question, please. From Pak Muhammad Abdillah, maybe. Begin from Muhammad Abdillah to answer this question.
Can you repeat the question, please? I'm sorry.
Yeah, is it possible if there are parties that make the polarization in Indonesia become worse, how we can find solution for the polarization and strengthening the tolerance and unity?
Yeah.
Have you got your question?
Yeah. I read the question in the chat. So this is interesting question actually, and I don't know how to answer it, because what we are doing now is part of the finding the solutions. I mean, I would say not finding the solution, but to open the awareness of the problem, what happens surrounding us, and then how to acknowledge each others in terms of religions and faith, so that we can live together. So the idea is not only strengthening the unity, but also accepting the difference among the others, accepting the various views of our neighbors, of our friends, of our families who has different types of faith, belief, cultures, and everything. So that's the from my point of view, right? So not only strengthening unity, but also accepting the others. That's my voice on this issue. Thank you.
Accepting the others and maybe recognizing the others. Okay, thank you.
May I?
Yeah,
May I answer?
Sorry.
Quickly? Okay,
yes,
thank you so
you
much.
Could answer
Yeah.
this question.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, thank you, Pak Dianati, for raising this question. I believe the keyword is two things: education and real engagement. Because education means that people or our society need to know, to learn about other religions, and also the real engagement between different faith. A community will, let's say, will decrease, or even eliminating the prejudices, because dismantling prejudices need to have not only knowledge but also engagement among different religious beliefs. That's
You finish your
yeah,
answer?
finish.
I think she is
Yeah,
muted.
finish. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I haven't found another question. Maybe somebody will raise the question, please. Or maybe there are some questions which are not answered yet. Prabowo, Mas Prabowo, have you written some question not answered by the panelists?
There's one question, Mr. Dindin, from
Yeah.
Nelson Kalai.
Oh, Nelson Kalai. What is the
Yeah.
question?
I'm just wondering why MUI fatwa on the prohibition of saying Merry Christmas just came out, considering that long in history we as Indonesians have practiced it. Ambon is likely a good example of this. To what extent political dimension affect this? You can read in the chat.
Okay, maybe you can again, Prof. Ali will respond to this question.
No, I think it's already clear from Hans' paper and Muhammad Abdillah paper. There was a long history of political polarization, the issues of Christianization, Islamization, is feeling threatened by Christian missions, Christian fundings from outside, and the building of houses in the neighborhoods, all political and social factors that affect the issuance of the fatwa in about Christmas, and I think it's very political, and it's also religious. So religious comes later. Religious is basically you just need to find the justification from the text, but that's after the fact. So the people already greet each other, but then they felt that there's some people who felt that there is a threat from the, but actually the threat is from within Islam itself is more dangerous according to them. That's why you have the fatwa against the Shiite, against the Ahmadi. It is even more contesting. So it's if you study other papers and maybe other books, you will find that Muslims are less tolerant toward other Muslims than non-Muslims, generally speaking. So because they feel like the threat is from within, is more dangerous than the threat from outside, and that's you can see from different research. And Muhammadiyah and NU have different interesting relationship with that. And Professor Najib has also articles about that, and more recent surveys. This is interesting surveys. Nahdlatul Ulama are not more tolerant than Muhammadiyah in the relationship with the non-Muslim leadership, or even with Muslim non-Muslim neighbors. So it's really interesting. So we have to talk about philosophical pluralism and then social tolerance in different layers. People might be very exclusive in terms of their theology, but then socially they might be very tolerant. but there are also some people who say that other non-Muslim can get to have, can get heaven, but they don't want to intermarry with them. So it's really different layers. We have to be, it really depends on in what cases. We cannot make a generalization. The notion of tolerance, social tolerance, religious tolerance, theological pluralism, all in inclusivism, they're all this kind of attitude we not understand. So yes, to answer your question, there is a political dimension, social dimension, religious dimension, and you will find all the factors. And which one is more? It depends on a particular institution. Even among MUI themselves, there is the differences. There is a disagreement among them. And of course, as already mentioned by Hans, even Ma'ruf Amih himself, he was different from the fatwa itself. And now I would say more and more Muslims are saying Merry Christmas than before, at least in social media. And more public figures saying that. In fact, not only Merry Christmas, but also interfaith, interfaith prayers, doa lintas agama, where you have different du'as, different prayers said by different religious individuals and said Amin and also like that. So it's more. I think it's more people are engaged with each other, and I think because of the friendship, because of the relationship, because of interconnectedness between more peoples now. And Facebook has so many things that social media has so many things to explore and to study more. I think Najib, maybe you have something to say about this.
No, Kali, I'm listener here.
Can I say something?
Okay, please,
Can I
please
say
go, Nelly. Yeah.
Yeah, no, because what Mas Muhammad Ali just tells us, you see exactly the same happening within Christianity. I mean, those of us who live in the States, I think, Laila, you witnessed the battles in Notre Dame among Catholics. The thing I think is really nowadays more, there is this division between people of faith, of a certain faith, and there's the threat of secularism. And the threat of secularism, or people leaving the faith, or leaving, in this case, the church, right? Or moving from one church to the other. They don't leave the faith, but they join a different group. And that creates a lot of anxiety. And then somehow, as it needs a sort of enemy to portray or to kind of project all these issues on. And so that is then the secularism, LGBT, LGBTQ, that is the threatening the fabric of society, the family, and on and on and on. And so I think we have the very similar battle here going on in the States and in many other parts of the world. And basically, I think what I hear all of you say somehow give me a lot of hope and encouragement, because in the end, what we need to do is strive to learn to know each other better and understand each other better. And that basically starts with, if you have children, if you have family within families. I mean, we in the States here, Donald Trump has split families, has literally split families in two, where families no longer speak to each other. And my neighbors even tried to not speak to me because they were pro-Trump and I was not. And well, they did not manage because I did not let them. I actually just made them soup and bread and brought it over. And, because I felt this should not divide us. But it is very easy. It is very easy to go into this mode, like, to make us black and white state of being. And like I said, what we see in the articles is that there is no black and white. But we try to maybe make it that way, but it doesn't exist. Life is messy, it's complex. And that is the reality. And that is, I hope that many people are reading this special issue, because it shows the messiness of just one fatwa, right? That nothing is clear really. And that, like you say, a lot of nowadays people decide themselves. A lot of Muslims decide for themselves that they're doing certain things and not other things.
Thank you very much, Prof. Nelly, for this very interesting and excellent opinion. I think this time is 9:40. We already 9:40. We should close this webinar. Yeah. But before closing, I think Muhammad Ali, Prof. Muhammad Ali, can some closing remark for this question. But I think we really delightful, yeah, to have this webinar, because this webinar can be become recommendation, yeah, for the government, yeah, based on the research, yeah, that Indonesian actually, I mean, Islamic Indonesian, Islam in Indonesia is not a single. There are diverse opinion, and every person can choose opinion suitable for their belief and their social relation. But I think we also watching that Islamist point of view in Indonesia is actually changing and challenged. But actually, what we call wasatiyah Islam is the most applicable and dominant paradigm in Indonesia, and then this paradigm can what we call enhance and maintain our cohesion among Indonesian people. That's my opinion, my concluding as a moderator. Please, Muhammad Ali, can you also express your concluding remark in this closing? Thank you.
Thank you so much. First of all, I would like to thank Professor Ahmad Najib Burhani, Research Center for Society and Culture, Indonesian Institute of Science, Indonesia, and the staff, Prabowo and Dr. Dundin Zainuddin, as the amazing moderator for this webinar and Zoom meeting. And secondly, I would like to thank Professor Nelly van der Harder for reading all the papers and making connections and great comments, and really inspiring also engagement, personal as well as academic, insight. And that's really helpful. And then I make notes, all of them. And I think for us, for each of the writers and authors, we can make further study of what are some of the points that been raised by Professor Nelly van der Harder. There's so many good things that we can actually use for our next project, or the same project. We want to develop the project into a larger project or books or something. I think some of the insight will be very helpful. And then of course, I would like to thank all the participants and authors. I cannot say every one of you, but I really appreciate that. Thank you so much for giving insight and presenting your work to us here. And lastly, UC Riverside is a small, we have a Middle East and Islamic Studies program here, offering major and minor in Islamic Studies, also designated emphasis in Middle East and Islamic Studies for graduate students. And we try to introduce Indonesia. We are in the US, try to introduce the voices from Indonesia more and more. And I think that's our challenge here in the US, to introduce more voices. And as Dr. Dundin Zainuddin said, the diversity, right? Islam and the diversity in Indonesia, I think we need more and more voices, scholarly voices. And I think this spatial issue of the Muslim world is a starting point. I hope this is not the last, but it is a starting point. Hopefully more and more spatial issues about Indonesia will come out, will come up in different journals. So more scholarly works, can be published and can be, publicly known to scholars everywhere in the whole world. And I think that's just to conclude our webinar. And thank you so much again. And our apologies for the connection. It's, I'm not sure why it happened, but anyway, it's a technology, so there's always mystery. So I think there is always, we talk about theology here, we talk about gender, we talk about politics, but there's always something mystery also about technology.
Okay, I think
but
so.
because of the technology, we are connected, right? So, I don't think it will be possible without Zoom to have this webinar, from different places. So I really appreciate everyone, and thank you so much again. And I hope that we can see each other again, if not virtually, maybe in person, maybe in Indonesia, in Japan, wherever we are. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And we can have usually there is a picture, maybe someone would take a picture of everyone showing the videos. Pak Prabowo is here.
Yes, I want to actually, Mas Ali, I want to add a few notes.
Please.
Yes, yeah, I would like to thank for all of you for joining this discussion, this webinar. And also, like Kak Ali said, that we are sorry for the trouble in the internet connection, related to the internet connection in the middle of our discussion. At the beginning, we were good. At the end, we were good, but in the middle, we were troubled by the internet connection. And we are hoping, actually, it's not only this discussion. From this discussion, we know about Kali and also Riverside University and also Professor Nelly. Perhaps someday we are having more collaboration and cooperation in terms of like exchanges, researcher or student, and also sending our researcher to your university, including to Waseda University, and also to Wake Forest and University of California, Riverside. And then the last one, I think we are hoping to continue to publish like a special issue on certain issues, like I mentioned before, for instance, about digital theology, the influence of social media and also new technologies in our theology, in our daily religious ritual, something like that. And also about, for instance, Muslim millennials, which is different from our time, perhaps, and also some other issue. And again, thank you very much for joining us, and sorry for the trouble, and see you again perhaps soon. Thank you.
Okay. Return to Prabowo.
Okay, thank you very much. Because of our time is limited and this room will be closed after minutes, and with the all session we have done, so we have finished all agenda of webinar and discussion today. And thank you for all smart authors and speakers for the presentation. Special thanks to Professor Nelly, and Mr. Dundin Zainuddin as our moderator, and Professor Ahmad Najib Burhani, Professor Muhammad Ali, and all audiences. To all participants, thank you for joining us together this morning. And at last, see you. Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you, and assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam. Oke, terima kasih semuanya, Prof. Ali.
Sudah foto ya, Mas Prabowo sudah difoto?
Oke, terakhir kali foto ya. 1, 2, 3. Tahan dulu. Satu halaman. Halaman kedua. 1. Oke. Next. The last one. Oke. Oke, thank you.
Oke, terima kasih.
Terima kasih
semuanya.
Thank you for all speakers.
Bye bye. Thank you.
Good night, Bu
Terima
Nelly.
kasih, Mas Najib.
Ya, night.
Jam berapa Bu Nelly di sana?
Falailatul and I have to go to bed now. Sudah malam.
Sudah malam.
Quarter to 11.
Okay.
Iya.
Please rest.
Sehat-sehat Bu Nelly.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
But
will.
it
Yeah.
was-
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Thank you,
Sampai
Thank you
jumpa
so
lagi.
Iya,
Nabila.
sampai
Thank you
jumpa
again.
lagi. Thank you, Bu Nelly.
Thank you, everybody. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Bye.
Yo, bye.
Bye.
Thank you.